Together, Together. This movie premiered at Sundance this past January. You and I had a chance to watch it, Will Ashton, and I have a feeling, like me, one of your favorite things about this is it's only 90 minutes long.
That was nice, yeah.
What a breezy movie.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the big things I remember from the festival was that not only was it fairly short, but it was also a consistently lighthearted, goofy, sweet movie, which, considering how bleak and dark and long-winded some of those movies could be, in that respect, it was certainly a kind of nice change of pace. I'll remember that.
I agree. It was one of my most pleasant watching experiences of the festival. So Together, Together, it is a comedy. And what's interesting about it is it's kind of geared up as a romantic comedy, but it's not. It's a comedy. It's about two friends or two people who become friends,
It's buddy comedy.
Buddy comedy, sure.
Yeah.
I guess.
I mean, it's a film about friends, so it's a buddy comedy. Yeah,
sure. I mean, it's kind of about friendship. It's about how people become friends. It's directed by Nikole Beckwith, who is also an actor and screenwriter and a playwright. She's done a bunch of things. Like she did the Tiger Saw record Sing like years and years and years ago. And I think she hails or she wrote what was that screenplay she wrote? I have to look it up probably. It's something that got her on the Sundance list, but I mention it because I think it's called Stockholm, Pennsylvania, which, you're not from Stockholm, Pennsylvania, Will Ashton?
No, but is that the one that Saoirse Ronan was in?
I don't know, actually.
I thought I remember her being in a movie called Stockholm, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it might be Saoirse Ronan. Yeah, I remember Cynthia Nixon was in it. Cynthia Nixon and Jason Isaacs for sure, but I can look it up. But I didn't see the movie. And that was her first, Nikole Beckwith's first film. So that was about 6 years ago now. And I will just say that Together, Together, first thing to point out about it, another Sony movie we're talking about. At least it was distributed by Sony internationally, but this is Bleecker Street here in the United States. And the movie itself, it stars Ed Helms as this guy who's in his like late 40s or whatever, however old I think he's supposed to be in this movie. And he wants to have a kid. And the only way he can have a kid at this point, because romantically things haven't worked out for him. He was in a relationship for a long time, but things happen. And he decides that he wants to be a dad and he doesn't want to wait any longer. And so he decides he's going to hire a surrogate. And so he hires a woman played by Patti Harrison, who can carry his child. And say again?
No, I was excited because I like Patti Harrison.
Very, very funny comedian. And she kind of comes into his life, and they kind of start off a little bit prickly because he's very overbearing. He's kind of like, you got to do this, you got to do that. You can't, that's my baby. And that kind of thing. And she's a little bit breezier. She's younger, obviously. If you're not aware of Patti Harrison's work, I mean, and in the movie too, like she's in her like late 20s or however. And I think people recognize her from, she's in I Think You Should Leave, Shrill, really liked her in that, Broad City, Search Party, really great comedian. And her thing in this, though, is that eventually they form a bond, they form a friendship. And a lot of people would watch this and be like, oh boy, here comes the romance, here comes is he going to fall in love with his surrogate? I'm not going to say what happens in this movie, because that's the point, is to watch it. But I will just say, like, please don't watch it for that. Like, watch it because it's more about, I think, two people coming together and realizing that despite all the things that separate them and make them different, there are so many things that can bring people together. And maybe not together, but definitely together. And I just found it very sweet and heartwarming. And despite everything I've just said, the movie does take us some weird places. It gets into some things about how when you spend a lot of time with someone, there is that sort of unspoken question of like, what is the thing that brings us together? Like what creates these connections, especially in this such a weird situation. And one of my favorite things about this movie is just the fact that I don't think I've ever seen a movie where a transgender woman gets to play a pregnant woman. And it's just, it's not a thing. Like, you can just watch this movie, and I'm sure a bunch of people are going to watch this movie and have no idea that Patti Harrison is transgender. And then just find out and be like, oh, maybe my preconceptions about trans people are built on a lot of bigoted stuff that I hadn't processed before. And so I hope this movie does that for them and kind of brings people around on some of this stuff of like understanding that, like, you know, there's a lot more to the trans experience than like they have to be like these typecasted characters in movies. And you know, like, gosh, like we have like Scarlett Johansson, who almost was going to play one of them, like one of the, I forget what even movie that was, but it was like a real life person, right?
Rub and Tuck.
Yeah.
It was going to be. I remember that because it was going to take place here in Pittsburgh. I think it was going to be filmed here too.
Yeah, my thing is that like I don't see why trans people can't play, you know, people who are cisgendered in the sense that like they're, you know, the gender assigned at birth and all of that. So that probably one of my favorite things about this movie was experiencing like, that was definitely a first for me and like watching a movie as far as unless I've seen something else where that did happen and I just didn't even know because I just didn't happen not to know that the actor or actress, whoever, was trans. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, in that respect, I definitely think it's very refreshing, and I do agree with you that the kind of the buddy chemistry, I guess, between Ed Helms and Patti Harrison, there is something very sweet and natural to their correspondence. I definitely think as the movie comes along, it definitely finds its rhythm in that respect. I think the best scenes in the movie tend to be when it's just the two of them bouncing off each other. Like you said, I appreciate that there isn't a forced romantic element that's thrown in here. It's not like something like Knocked Up where it's like them kind of finding their bond through pregnancy. But like I said, I mean, finding your bond in a romantic fashion, I mean. But yeah, I mean, I do think there is something very humble and sweet nature about this. And I do appreciate that the movie is actually exploring the like male paternal clock in a way that or whatever what's the term, like the kind of like the ticking clock. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. And do they reference it in the movie? I don't remember.
I don't remember them mentioning it in the movie. I the only reason I really
like
took special notice of it. There's that movie called Timer that I think it's about that. But but the reason I took notice of it was because at Sundance, the director mentioned that was a point of interest for her to explore that angle because she found it to be both unique and kind of funny and sad at the same time. So that was definitely something I took notice of and found worth appreciating and recommending, is that it was able to kind of explore this male kind of insecurity or emotional insecurity in a way that we don't often see in this genre. I mean, I think everything that we said there is admirable and worth recommending, but ultimately I also think the film itself is it's more, I think, pretty good than good. I definitely can see why it had such a stark emotional resonance for you. I don't think it really did as much for me. I don't think, outside the elements that we've already talked about and commended, I don't think it's really reinventing the wheel too much beyond that. I found the jokes to be kind of hit and miss, and the dramatic moments, I think I found those to be a little bit more affecting than some of the more broader comedic elements. But at the same time, I think this is a pretty easy, breezy watch, like we said. I definitely think it's going to be quite a crowd pleaser, and I do hope that people get a chance to check it out and watch it. I feel kind of bad that it's coming out right now when theaters aren't really being pursued as often outside of the kind of more marquee things. Like, this seems like something that a streamer service would probably have a better time getting to a wider audience. Like something like Hulu would probably do better with getting this to a bigger audience in the same way that they were able to turn Palm Springs into a pretty sizable hit last year. I feel like this one will probably get buried in a theatrical rollout right now. But at the same time, I do appreciate that it's getting a wide release, and I hope people check it out.
This is one of the few times I've liked Ed Helms in a movie. I'll put it that way. I usually don't like him that much. And yeah, look, I think the thing with this movie, and I agree that they're kind of burying this, releasing it like this in April. I wish this was like a summer kind of indie movie when it could have a little bit more traction. But I think, to what you're saying, it's not laugh out loud funny. It's not, it's not a comedy in the big sense. It's kind of like We Broke Up, which I was talking about earlier in the show. It's a hangout movie. It's more about just like comfort food, and liking the characters and just watching them deal with things and react to things and wondering how they're going to deal with one situation and how they're going to get along, how they're going to fight. I like the way these characters fight. It feels like there's energy to it. There's always like they call each other out on certain things. And to your angle too on the whole idea of like a paternal clock or like, yeah, the timer for like, there is a limit to like for guys in this way. And what I like about the movie though is like it doesn't take away from the fact that biologically that is a much harsher reality for women. I mean, this movie constantly is talking about gender. It's constantly trying to reframe the guy as like needing to understand that, yeah, you know, it's inconvenient. It's unfortunate that he's had bad luck with some of the ways that like life has treated the situation for him, but he's extremely privileged. And the movie is kind of about how he has to realize that as a guy, he's very privileged in those respects, and understanding what Patti Harrison's character has to go through and respecting her, and not just paying lip service to respecting her as a human being, but doing it through action. And I liked that. I liked the setup of that movie. I could tell that was a forefront in the director's mind here.
Sure. Yeah. I would certainly agree with that. And I think that's, like I said, I think there's a lot here that I find very commendable. I just kind of wish that I had more of an emotional resonance with the movie itself. I think it's a decent film, not only in terms of what it's trying to do morally, but in terms of quality. I think it's a fine film, and I enjoyed watching it. I think it's very sweet-natured and appealing in that respect. But at the same time, I guess I'm not quite sure what allowed you to like full out love it the way that you do outside of just like the general things that we're talking about.
I think it's the quirk factor. It's quirky, and I think that it comes through, and I had an emotional resonance with it. And I think it's just coming from the fact that I wish more movies would do what this movie does, where it makes a lot of to do about how unconventional friendships can be way more interesting than the standard typical romance. And I think that like I know one person I was talking about this movie with was like, why don't we get more platonic love stories? Like it's something that is really weird to me that we don't get that. And I think that's what's fascinating to me about this movie. It is the cliched kind of structure of an indie romantic comedy, but it's a totally different mood. It's a totally different set of circumstances in a way that I think is more honest, and that's what makes it more interesting to me. And I mean, it's not the most noteworthy movie in the world. It's not in a lot of other senses, especially in the terms of its story. It's not doing anything all that new. It's not doing anything that's going to really knock you off your socks or subvert your expectations. But I don't know. I think that this is just the type of movie that hits my list for just kind of giving me some warmth and giving me some just some good performances and some good writing. A Patti Harrison performance that is hopefully going to wake a lot of people up to her talents, especially in movies. I'd love to see her career continue to blossom after this. I hope that ends up being the case. And I think that the casting here, they found an incredible chemistry between the two actors, and it paid off.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I can definitely get behind a lot of that. And I mean, it's a warm, sweet little movie, and I think it is going to appeal to a lot of people. I don't think it's one that like I said, I don't think you need to rush out to see in theaters, but I think it's a perfectly fine rental or subsequently a nice streaming watch on like a cold afternoon or something like that. But yeah, I mean, I kind of wish I was as enthusiastic as you are about it. But I mean, for me, if I were to give it a letter grade, I'd probably give it a warm and affectionate kind of B-. I think there's a lot to value here. I do actually really appreciate how the movie's able to be gently curious in a way that's like not really searching to answer its questions, but just kind of like have a general kind of conversation about these things. And it's like, yeah, it's kind of messed up that these things are like this, or like that people assume so-and-so is the case and stuff like that. And, I guess people might find it frustrating that it doesn't really seek to resolve it that much. But I guess I tend to find movies that don't try to have like, bombastic conclusions. Like I tend to respect a movie that's just trying to find the emotional truth of a scene as opposed to some sort of forced catharsis. For me, I personally find that to be more endearing and worthwhile. But there is a lot of like Sundance qualities to this, and I guess in a good and bad way that I find both admirable and grating. I just remember when I saw it at Sundance, I was just like, this is definitely the type of film that I would expect to see at this festival. I mean, I
Yeah,
don't think
that's fair.
it's doing something outside the wheel here, but it's a worthwhile film. It's very sweet, like I said, and I think it's going to meet a lot of people well.
Yeah, yeah. I think that this movie, it's in theaters right now. I know a few people who are vaccinated and they saw it in a theater. And one person in particular said that it was a really great experience. It wasn't a packed theater or anything, but there was something that I think can get a little lost in translation when you don't experience films communally, that I especially was feeling like pretty jealous that I didn't get to have that experience myself. I'm not fully vaccinated yet, and even when I am, I don't think I'll be rushing out to the theater anytime soon. But yeah, that said, I'm a B plus on this. I think that one of the only other things that I could caution people is like, not everyone's going to love the Ed Helms character. I think some people might watch it and honestly just might have a tougher time connecting with how his character relates to our other main, and I think that there are some things he said. He can be kind of annoying, and it's a very soft line. I think for me, the film pulls it off, but I could see other people being like, nah, this is a little too much, and I kind of maybe they want the movie to maybe have a different energy or a different actor there. For me though, it still works. So I'm pretty good with it, and I really want to watch it again. I really enjoyed it. I wish you had liked it more, but I'm glad you enjoyed it somewhat.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, it's not like a soft recommendation or anything. It's one that I enjoyed. It's like a hearty B minus, if such a thing can be a hearty B minus. Like I think it's one that I enjoyed, and like I said, I think it's one that other people will enjoy. I don't really think it rises above a certain level of like pretty good throughout. But that's just my opinion. I'm sure a lot of people are going to agree with you and be as enthusiastic as you are, and I don't fault anyone for getting a lot out of this one.
I have a feeling most people will probably be in between. I feel like a lot of people are going to be like, yeah, that was like a B. That's my expectation.
Makes sense.
So. Thank you so much for listening to our show. Be sure to subscribe to Cinemaholics on your favorite podcast app of choice or find us on YouTube. See you all next time.